Hello, guys and gals, me Mudahar, and today we're gonna have to be talking about a boy known as Johnny Somali. Now, I talked about Johnny Somali a few months ago, to be honest, on my YouTube channel, where we covered up some of his antics on the internet and looked at Japan's problem, known as nuisance streamers, quite literally, with a big magnifying lens. Now, to understand, Japan is one of the biggest countries in the world, all right, one of the biggest economies in the world, and it's a pretty big cultural significant point for people. I personally don't really get all of the weeaboos. I mean, to be honest, I've been on 4chan long enough to see individuals who go, Times Square? What a bastion of consumerism! Ew, advertisements everywhere! And then they go to Shibuya, and they're like, whoa, look at all these screens. Wow, that's some culture. Ooh, just another city, all right? So I don't want to sour anybody's sour. Anybody say sour? Go to Sour GG and buy some ordinary berry. Yeah, currently we got a limited edition with my boy Caleb, the best flavor they ever made, and it belongs to me, all right? I'm taking that, no biases. If you want to check it out, go over there. This is great candy. It sours up my mouth 1,000,000%, because it is sour candy, but it is good candy nonetheless. And you know what? It ain't that much. $6 for a delicious bag of candy that'll last you, hopefully, a while. Eat responsibly. That said, when I use the word responsible, Johnny lacks it. But one of the first actual issues, one of the first problem people in Japan in general, were individuals like Logan Paul. If you remember, Logan Paul, like years ago, not even a decade ago, just years ago, was in Japan basically making a fool of himself. He was running around, basically making a mockery. The Japanese people do not enjoy this, okay? Throwing a fucking Pokeball at a Prius and at people is not funny. I love this clip a lot too. Look at this one right here. He like throws it onto a cop. Imagine doing that to an American police officer, dude. That's like trying to catch an entire magazine in your jugular right there. But of course, this all culminated with YouTube punishing him financially, and also him apologizing, obviously not to us, but to the fucking country of Japan. Imagine being such an idiot. You gotta apologize to a country en masse. That's just embarrassing. But of course, ladies and gentlemen, Japan doesn't screw around with nuisance streamers. Now, there's a site known as Kick.com, which is a competitor to Twitch, and it's got a kind of a laissez-faire TOS, which has allowed a lot of nuisance streamers to come through. One of the big problems in the world right now, not really in the grand scheme of things, but one of the big problems tourism-wise is nuisance streamers. See, for a long time, people considered Americans to be the worst tourists, and the Chinese took that over. But Americans are not, they are not a people willing to be number two at anything. So Johnny Somali, I don't know if he's a CIA agent or some shit, comes back and tries to take the number one spot. Now, of course, Johnny Somali, one of the clips that I showed you a while back, was literally him walking in to an actual construction site. And of course, this is Johnny Somali walking into a construction site, which, by the way, he had no protective gear on, no nothing, just IRL streaming. Obviously, the people at the construction site tell him, get out there, boy! This ain't your place! And that's pretty much what it comes down to. This is one of the things that got Johnny in actual serious trouble. And of course, Johnny later went into a restaurant, made a fool of himself again, to the point where law enforcement had to come in and basically actually arrest him. This man is not making a good first impression on the Japanese. And because of this, he now lands himself in serious hot water, in a country that will only ever go after you when they know they can book you dead to rights. So the fact that there's actual prosecution going against him is not good for him at all. So this thread by Jeffrey J. Hall, who's also been covering this situation as well, has basically posted out that on November 2nd, 2023, Johnny Somali has been formally charged with a crime in Japan. He will face criminal prosecution for forcible obstruction of business. And again, this is from him in a beef bowl restaurant in Osaka. So again, he's being genuinely annoying to the people around him. And you might think that this is a joke, and it may be a joke for our side of the world, but Japanese people don't treat this that lightly. So to give you an idea, this is the exact law it seems that he's breaking. So under Penal Code Article 233, 234, obstruction of business and forcible obstruction of business. So right over here, any person who damages the credit or obstructs the business of another by spreading false rumors or by the use of fraudulent means shall be punished by imprisonment of not more than 3 years or a fine of no more than 500,000 yen. Now, I find this so weird, even in any part of the world. How you can equate a few $1,000s, that's what 500,000 yen is when you convert it to USD, versus 3 years of your lifespan, That's insane to me, dog. All right, it doesn't even seem like it matches properly. But then you've got forcible obstruction of business, which is any person who obstructs the business of another by force shall be dealt with in the same manner as prescribed under the preceding articles. So by force means that he walks in with a fucking camera on and starts streaming himself being a total dipshit to the world around him. And that's not what Japan is okay with. To give you guys an idea of how rough Japan can be, literally just this year, October 13, 2023, in Nagoya, an individual known as Ryoga Yoshino was sentenced by the Nagoya District Court to 3 years in prison, suspended for 5. And then again, this is why Yoshino said during his trial regarding this situation, "I did it to satisfy my desire for recognition and wanted to be popular. What I did was very stupid." And you might be wondering, what did this guy do? He's a 21-year-old man, and he was in the obstruction of business after he posted an online video of himself licking a soy sauce bottle at an outlet of a conveyor belt sushi chain in Nagoya in February. So after a few months of careful deliberation by the prosecution, they sentenced this guy to 3 years in prison for licking a soy sauce bottle in a conveyor belt sushi chain. And again, this is like the defense even asking for a suspended sentence, saying that yes, he had remorse apparently. The other guy that they were with was given probation. And according to the ruling, Yoshino, in conspiracy with another man, arrested in connection with that incident, obstructed business at an outlet of Kura Sushi Incorporated in the central Japan city by filming his licking of a soy sauce bottle and then just posting it to social media. You might not think that that's a big deal, and honestly, I think 3 years in prison for that may be a tad excessive, but Japan doesn't fuck around. In fact, Japan is a country known for having the highest conviction rating in the world, at least one of the highest. As of 2001, Japan has a conviction rating of over 99.8%, even higher than authoritarian regimes that literally get to make up the law as time goes on. So to understand why this actually happens, apparently in Japan, the prosecution basically only goes for cases that they know that they'll win. So here they write in the power of the prosecutor, what are the key issues Japan's criminal justice system faces? So in this situation, they said the prosecution naturally goes to great lengths to ensure that criminals get their just deserts. But in doing so, they also exercise a high degree of discretion in deciding which cases to pursue. Public prosecutors, as is Johnny's situation, typically concentrate on suits where conviction is almost guaranteed, leading to the suspension of around 60% of criminal cases in Japan without an indictment. So this is a pretty bad precedent for, again, the law in general, when the prosecution basically only attacks that they know they can win. But it's caused a situation in Japan where you're basically like guilty until somehow proven innocent. It's not like the movies, it's not like the video games like Judgment. The law is very stacked against you in Japan. And unfortunately, in Johnny's case, even if he is a complete and abject dumbass, he has caused himself some serious harm in the country alone. Now, this is a translation of Sankei, the publication, so don't take this to heart. Obviously, there's going to be some mistranslations, but they are listing him as a junk net distributor. Junknet. Johnny Somali, or also known as Ismail Ramsey Khalid, defendant is held by the Osaka Gyojo. The defendant does not deny that he has taken. I also regret my actions. However, he denied some of the charges that the audio was automatically flowed. So obviously, he has remorse. He has to show remorse to get the best possible outcome. But of course, even the law isn't taking it too kindly. According to the indictment, around 1:30 a.m. on September 12th, at a restaurant in Tadamibori, Shoku, Osaka City, there were other guests while playing loud music while filming on a smartphone. The clerk had said he had forced him to respond to the defendant. Khalid's defendant, repeatedly caused nuisance in Japan and delivered this live in a video. And he was earned from viewers known as a nuisance distributor, a nuisance streamer. And of course, he was arrested and then, of course, rearrested on charges of disability. I feel like I didn't translate properly. Maybe it did. Who knows? Now, the prosecution has asked for a 200,000 yen fine, which equates around to, if you wanted to do the exact conversion, around $1,400 US. Okay, that's pretty much what we're sitting at over here. And allegedly, the charges for trespassing on the construction site may have been dropped, but not, from what I understand, with the restaurant, which is basically where the crux of this argument is occurring. Now, to understand, do I think Japan is going to make an example and make him do some time in Japanese prison? Again, nobody's going to know until January 10th, which is when the actual verdict will be dropped. But I would imagine that to make this guy do something in Japan, some semblance of actual justice has to be shown. And they may just make an example of him and then deport him long after. Just because this is becoming a big problem in Japan. It's not just Johnny Somali, it's other kick streamers, other people who decided to go to Japan and make a fool out of their entire, and make a mockery out of their system, so to speak. Now, if Johnny goes to Japanese prisons, from what I understand, this is the actual schedule, which, again, it's funny that the show Free Time is like 3 hours. For a streamer, this is all free time. Maybe a sliver of this should be sleep. But if Johnny goes to Japanese prisons, he's got sleep, he's got to wake up, do morning, and basically work the entire day. All right, and again, Japanese prison conditions are known for very, very monotonous, mind, soul, fucking gutting work. All right, with the absolute worst, places to be in. In the summers, they're too hot to work in. In the winters, they're too cold to operate in. From what I've heard, of course. And then with 3 hours of free time, he has some time to reflect on how stupid he's been until the day starts all over again. Now, you might be like, Muda, do you take joy in any of this? To be honest with you, I didn't ruin this man's life. He ruined his own life. And to understand, Japan is not screwing around anymore. I think for the last couple of years, a bunch of pranksters like Logan Paul, and now it's gotten to the point where you've got actual people like Johnny Somali who are causing actual bits of mayhem. It's not just like goofy stuff throwing pokeballs on police officers, okay, plushies or whatever. Even though that's also pretty wrong in of itself, this is an individual who runs around Japan and screams, Fukushima, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and thinks it's hilarious. This man is like if you made a scary movie, you know those classic scary movies back in the day, all right, like the riffs? If somehow you brought that shit into the modern day, except you zapped even more of the funny out of it, this is the kind of guy. This is an individual that has no comedy to it, and the fact that he's getting his just desserts is fun to watch. But obviously, it also shows that Japan doesn't screw around when they're delivering justice to any of these people. And again, a question that I want to ask is, should this guy do, like, years in prison for his behavior? Or should Japan just fine him a few $1,000 and deport his ass forever? That's pretty much what I have to ask in the comment section below. I know that this is going to elicit some strong emotions, but honestly, the more I look into it, the more I see how much he screwed his life up, at least in that part of the world. It's tough to watch, man. It's a tough pill to swallow. But that said, ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mudahar. And if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like if you dislike it, I am out.